over from failures suffered earlier in life. However, it can also be knowledge that someone is not doing the things expected of them while doing a great job of smiling and socializing in hopes the world doesn't see behind the mask. As I go off into the professional world, it is my fervent prayer that no one accept less from me than they do my colleagues because I'm nice and they don't want to hurt my feelings. I don't want to be the person who is the weakest link and never told, although everyone knows it. While it isn't a sin to love the spotlight, the work you should have been doing is probably a less visible job than you preferred. Some genuinely love you, but most tolerate or pity you. No one will argue that you are wonderful at cheering people up. However, years from now, when we look back at the people who influenced our careers the most, you will be remembered as the nice professor, and that was a waste of our tuition dollars. A and D are incredibly nice, but they don't sacrifice their work to play with their students. They don't have to do that because they are very good at what they do, and they care about the commitment to the school and its students. In your fabulous shoes, I would be mortified and fearful every day that my position would be eliminated. Maybe that is what lies beneath your imposter syndrome. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Chalana Scales-Ferguson, and I thank you for spending some time with me this morning to learn a little bit more about what I have to say today. The words I shared are taken from an anonymous letter I received during my tenure working in a university setting in a student success role. I have never shared this with anyone before today, including my husband, who is in this room. Sorry, love. You know, Black women suffer in silence. At the time, I believe I internalized it in the fact that I had failed this student. Over time, however, as I witnessed up close and through media what many accomplished Black women, those more decorated with achievements than I, endure from those who hate to see us coming, I recognize it's not me, it's them. In the time I will spend with you this morning, we will indulge in storytelling. I will share a bit more so you can understand part of my story. I will speak the names of others whose stories add to the why I am on this platform today. And I will invite other Black women to share your stories so that we may use this space to process, to move toward healing for those of us in distress, and to restore ourselves to a place of wholeness that will allow us to keep going during this enduring fight for equity and justice in the midst of chaos. I acknowledge that we have allies among us, women who are not Black, men, and those who are non-binary. I thank you for choosing to be part of this session. I do request you allow this moment to center the experiences of Black women and offer the best ways in which you can be an authentic ally in this space. I see you, and I ask in this moment that you see us. You chose to spend time today at a session with this title at the Racial Equity Summit, so I know I have the right people in the room. To add a little context to that email that haunted me for some years, in that particular role, with limited funding, limited resources, and little support by the system, I was charged with offering academic support in a rigorous degree program to students whose predictive indicators deemed them eligible for services through my program. The program was not substantive, it was supportive in nature. Therefore, it did not target the highest achievers. It was invite only for those who were expected to underperform and optional to those who were ambitious and not too proud to seek help. Though this individual stated I was a professor who wasted their tuition dollars, I was a professor in name only, certainly not in salary, status, respect, or resources. I did not teach a curricular course, therefore tuition dollars were not attached to me in the way they tried to project. At the time, in 2021, my job was to offer academic support. However, for me, those other duties as assigned that they tell us about included psychological and emotional support for students in a time of crisis. To perform the role of a diversity, equity, and inclusion professional, though the institution wouldn't pay or name it as such. Think back to 2021. Where were we? In the midst of an enduring pandemic, the so-called racial reckoning post George Floyd's murder, when it took that much for the world to finally listen to what Black folks had been saying for years, it had already begun to die down in the silence we were starting to hear. The aftermath of the losses of civil rights giant John Lewis and Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg left us with the silence of the loud voice that kept us focused on voting rights, and a seat on the high court that was vacated too late that set us up for the constitutional crisis we're witnessing today. A misguided assault on critical race theory, which is really just a widespread effort toward erasure through fear. And oh yeah, the insurrection of January 6th, which prominently featured an elected official who represents the great state of Missouri. We were all dealing with a lot, and those who work in education and helping professions were required to endure while serving those who needed us most. When I received this message, I initially internalized what this student had to say. And I air quote, because there are times where I don't think that came from a student at all, but from a colleague that didn't want to see my shine. Perhaps I had not done a good job. Notwithstanding having received awards from several student groups and being lauded by the dean publicly for my contributions in the space. That is, before my voice got louder in its advocacy for the students who were being unheard in the war that was being waged in real time. I allowed that to get into my head until I began reading, finding community with other Black women, particularly those in higher ed, and then I remembered who I was, not who this individual and others wanted to shrink me into being. Let me be clear, I absolutely loved that job until I didn't. Despite the self-serving narrative that individual tried to spin to shun accountability for 3 years of supposed work that would not have been made or broken by a couple of months with me, if they even opted to participate, I uprooted myself and my family to take a chance and found a lane that I still love to dance in, shaping the future of the legal profession to prepare those who will be responsible for upholding our democracy. Instead of owning their own mediocrity, they attempted to dim the light of a Black woman that was shining too brightly. So why do I share this with you today? Because I know my story is not unique. Though I always knew there is an unbearable burden carried by Black women in this country, receiving this anonymous message from someone who was pompous enough to cast judgment in an attempt to break me, but cowardly enough to do it from behind a keyboard and a screen from an email address that shielded their identity, that was the beginning of me having had enough. Like the 92% whose ranks I was among on November 5th, 2024. Who are the 92%? I'm glad you asked. That is the percentage of Black women who proudly marched to the polls on Election Day to cast their votes for then Vice President Kamala Harris to become the President of the United States. I remember waking up the morning after the 2016 election in shock and disbelief. Something similar to the utter lack of understanding from 2000 when we thought Al Gore had won the election and then he didn't. In 2016, it was clear that sexism and misogyny had won in a country that ignored many disturbing attributes and behaviors rather than see a woman become president. But in 2024, we had seen the outcomes in 2016, and yet, despite having already witnessed the potential of what could be, the country chose again, and this time with a qualified candidate who was a woman that happened to be of Black and Indian descent. We are left to presume we are experiencing the result of what happens when the intersection of race and gender leads to denial. Now, this is not a political speech, but I cannot give credence to the topic without acknowledging what happened. In 2016, I was confused and numb because I knew deep down that hate had won. In 2024, I and the rest of the 92% were done. By show of hands, how many of you can attest to this? That's what I thought. We'll come back to that later. I imagine that there are some among you in the room or watching in cyberspace that have had one or more encounters that punched you in your gut and you began to question who you know you are. It's okay. By show of hands, let me see you. Good. That means we have some work to do because we will not let them win. Hold on to that because I hope to hear from some of you later in the session. Among the many truths that we received from Brother Malcolm X in his assessment of how Black women are handled in this country, it has been over 60 years since he told us the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the Black woman. The most neglected person in America is the Black woman. Let me just add, this is a quote directly from his work, "In my universe, Black is capital B." Just want to make that note. While we experience and expect this in mainstream society, we are often recipients of this disrespect, lack of protection, and neglect from our brothers and sisters who are also Black. Wait, am I supposed to say that out loud? You and I are not alone as we navigate this journey toward principle and purpose, being not enough and too much at the same time. Asked to carry the weight, but not take the credit. Being expected and required to show up, but not be seen. Though I could never capture all the stories that need to be shared of those women who rise, only to be shamed, chastised, discredited, or undermined, I want to take a few moments to highlight a few. In the description for this session, I referenced her famous quote because at the time of the call for presentations, and now still, I was having a moment when I felt both sick and tired. Let me share a bit of her speech. And you can always hear this long sob story. You know, it takes time. For 300 years, we've given them time. And I've been tired so long. Now I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. And we want to change. We want to change in this society in America because, you see, we can no longer ignore the facts and getting our children to sing, "Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed." What do we have to hail here? The truth is the only thing going to free us. And you know, this whole society is sick. And to prove just how sick it was, when we was in Atlantic City challenging the National Convention, when I was testifying before the Credentials Committee, I was cut off because they hate to see what they've been knowing all the time, and that's the truth. Fannie Lou Hamer. Breonna Taylor. Not sure if you've been paying attention to the news, but this situation has been playing out in the court system, and let me just say that justice is not being served in the loss of the life of this young woman. Nicole Hannah-Jones. She was a journalist and scholar and was offered a position at the University of North Carolina where she was an alumna, but that position was non-tenured, and she was essentially pressured to take that position. And she said no. And so she moved on, and she is thriving at Howard University. What we know is that the lack of offering her the position that she was due was not because of her lack of credentials and ability to perform the position. It was punishment for her publishing of the 1619 Project and speaking truth to power. Dr. Claudine Gay. She was installed as the 30th president of Harvard University and served from July 2023 to January 24th. That is until She was essentially pushed out, having her credentials questioned, but only after she refused to succumb to political pressure. Look that up. Dr. Antoinette Bonnie Candia-Bailey. I did not have the pleasure to know her, though she has many connections to our community. But this is a situation that brought to light how often Black women suffer, others suffer, but definitely Black women in the workplace, to workplace bullying, punishment for speaking out against that bullying, and ultimately her death by suicide after this exacerbated her mental health journey. And while there were investigations on this situation, which of course came back with no findings, her voice continues to be silenced in this universe. And I vow, and others who are advocates for her, to not let that voice be silenced. So there is a page on LinkedIn called In Workplace Bullying. Check that out and follow that, because it is definitely bringing light to Dr. Candia-Bailey's situation and many others who have faced that. Then I have to close with this one. Vice President Kamala Harris. And I added some points of her resume to the screen just as a visual for you to see who she was when this country said that she was too ambitious when she was running for vice president, and essentially wanted her to promise that she wouldn't seek a bid for the presidency. And when she did seek that bid, we heard many stories and many narratives, which led me to that 92% on that day last year. There are many others whose stories made me ill, literally ill, sick and tired, including Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, whose presence I had the honor to be in just last week as she shared stories from her memoir. For as much as I celebrate her accomplishment, I'm reminded each time we hear the court rule that she is waging a war for all of us, each and every day. I will never forget the tears that streamed down her cheeks during her confirmation hearings when Senator Cory Booker acknowledged her grace, poise, and restraint after being berated and disrespected during that process. These women are stories who are high profile, so most of us have heard them. But as I stated before, I know there are many stories among us. I opened with the anonymous message where a student, if this was really written by a student, attempted to discredit my work because they had clearly reached a point of reality of their own shortcomings in the 3 years of law school and decided that I, the only Black woman in the building with the JD, would be the scapegoat. Rather than accept the accountability and buckle down, it was more suitable to target perhaps the most vulnerable person in the building. My program was at the end of the academic journey. However, because I dare be seen with my fabulous shoes, not unlike the ones I'm wearing today, by the way, in a space that drove off most others sharing my profile, I was to blame. Recall the words I read. My appearance, my ability to build relationships and provide a sense of security to those navigating multiple crises while existing in a system that was not built for them, and trying to hold on to the trauma of being reminded of the danger of being Black in this country. That person compared me to colleagues who were white women, stating that I was not doing my job as well as they. I noted in real time that they didn't make this comparison to those with similar credentials to mine, i.e. the faculty members and deans. These women were the registrar and the administrative assistant. I respected them both, but neither of them possessed a Juris Doctor degree or a license to practice law. I do. To hold me to that standard was not only disrespectful and undermined the very credentials that landed me in the role, but it was an attempt to put me in my place by someone who could not fathom this level of achievement by a Black woman. About this imposter syndrome that the anonymous writer diagnosed me with, it is based on a 1978 study focused on high-achieving women and posited that, despite outstanding academic and professional achievements, they do not believe fully in their abilities and are afraid to be seen as a fraud. In a 2021 Harvard Business Review article, Stop Telling Women They Have Imposter Syndrome, The authors cite that feeling unsure shouldn't make you feel like an imposter, that bias and exclusion exacerbate feelings of doubt, confidence doesn't equal competence, and that we should focus on fixing bias, not women. The pushback on this concept, with the declaration that the answer to overcoming imposter syndrome is not to fix individuals, but to fix the systems of inequity in which we operate. There are those who cannot stand to see the light of this dynamic group who is always called upon to fix it, but always asked to humble ourselves and not take too much credit. What I, and probably some of you, experienced was the pet to threat phenomenon coined by Keisha Thomas and others, describing the workplace cycle when Black women enter the workplace with many cheerleaders and supporters, and over time become villainized, scapegoated, and in some cases pushed out, voluntarily or involuntarily. Some participants in their 2013 study spoke about being exploited for their diversity social capital while being undermined for their expertise. Society often expects Black women to fit into a narrow box of pleasantness and allow our boundaries to be trifled with to maintain a non-threatening facade of agreeability. When we do express frustration or assert ourselves, we are expeditiously labeled as aggressive or angry, perpetuating the harmful stereotype. In a piece from nonprofit Quarterly magazine, Shauna Knox asserted that Black women are overwhelmingly present in low-wage, inflexible service work, but there is a small contingent of Black women who have somehow transgressed this universal sentencing to unprotected, low-wage oblivion and have beaten the odds only to find that the reward for their efforts is an impossible dilemma, a choice to drown or to disappear. She goes on to say, if we allow ourselves to be as Black as we are, they will drown us in the darkness. If we refuse to be as Black as we are, they will make us disappear. Again, Black women are tired. Following the November election, as Black women, we were done, in all caps. Angered even when the power structure immediately began dismantling the already imperfect democracy that took generations to shape, folks began to ask, where is Kamala? And to look to Black women to do our normal fixing. We were done. In this moment, everything is on the line. I implore you to not quit. Understanding this sentiment, Dr. Angela Anderson was cited in a January Essence magazine article when the world was on fire, literally, and many of you saw the graphic. I should have added that with the Black women on the wall looking at all the things burning. She wanted us to reframe by giving us the concept of done, all caps, in an acronym. D, double down on rest and dedicate yourselves to healthy boundaries. Delivering from a deficit is over. O, own your stuff and let everyone else own theirs. Don't take on so much that you're overwhelmed. N, nurture yourselves first and then nurture the community. Dr. Anderson used a tree metaphor to illustrate the point. You've never seen a tree that has a rotten trunk and healthy branches because the trunk must be healthy first, and then everything that branches off from it is healthy. And so it is a requirement that you prioritize yourself first so that everything you're responsible for is then healthy as well. E, extend the same grace you extend to everyone else to yourself. It's okay to be tired and to ask for help. She closed by saying, no longer am I willing to prioritize those to whom I am replaceable at the expense of those to whom I am not. Channeling this energy, even though some days it's easier to be done, literally done, I'll close today with these calls to action. Do the work, but on our own terms. Galatians 6:9 states, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Yes, we are exhausted, but we get it done because we know how to. 2, hold allies accountable. In the years that have passed since George Floyd's murder, the slaps in the face by the justice system on many accounts, including the officers responsible for the senseless death of Breonna Taylor, it is past time to go beyond social media posts of solidarity, T-shirts, buttons, and signs. Some do the work, but often only to the degree that they may be centered in the space or that they may remain comfortable. While it is not our jobs to teach others about racism and all the things, it is our job to teach others how to and not to treat us. Challenge those true allies to go a little further, for it is them that we need when our voices are unheard. 3, save some for you. As Black women, we are nurturers, caregivers, movers, shakers, leaders, workers, all the things to all the people. While we will always be givers, we must be certain that we give to ourselves first. 4, be clear that these are dangerous times, and exhausting as it may be, we have a huge role to play in preserving and restoring our democracy. We owe it to our ancestors, and we owe it to our future generations. So before I open the floor, I want to thank Forward Through Ferguson and all those who made today possible and who saw fit to allow me to share this space. Some who know me well know you never know where I'm going to go. And while I toe the line, I do want to create spaces where we can have actionable items and be able to go forward authentically and with purpose. So we must rest and take care of ourselves, tap into our individual and collective power, contribute in those ways that are right for us. Not everyone is built to be an activist, an elected official, a lawyer, or a civil rights leader, but we all have something to contribute. Let's not let hate win. Keep shining, keep thriving, keep fighting. And so now I want to talk. I hope you want to talk. Is there anyone that has anything to share in their own personal story, anything that stuck out from anything that I shared, questions, or moved in any particular way? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you for being someone else that's not giving up, because I'm not right.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, and a few things on that. I commend you on offering that space because, again, it was rough. And sometimes it's hard to get from that space where we were. I remember the very next day, done. But then something went off on my phone. Another Black woman had reached out to me for something. I said, you know what? Let's go have pancakes. You know, just to get out. It was a beautiful day weather-wise. and to just feel that space outside of the solitude from home. And so I think the first step is having the courage to convene the spaces. And yes, there's that pushback, and I alluded to that in my remarks. Sometimes it is okay for the space to be who the space is for. And people have to honor that. And if they're true allies and committed to the purpose, they will understand and let us be. You said 2 words, anger and depression. And naming and owning those emotions and those responses to what happened is spot on, because I think sometimes we are conditioned to just press on. And I know that that is definitely a lot of what we felt. Again, it was anger and almost, I don't have the word, cynicism, if you will. You know, it's like, okay, this is where we are. She left, but the credentials, right? You know, way more than most that have served in the role as president have had, but she wasn't qualified, in the words of many. So what does that mean for the rest of us that are excellent people but haven't done that much? And what does that mean to her? Because I remember her at each step of my own anger and others. And I didn't mention Stacey Abrams, where she ran for governor in the thing that they said, well, she had too much student loan debt. Where did she go, to Yale Law School or one of those? You know, yeah. You know, but it's always those things that are designed to discredit. And as much as we feel it in the community, it's how do they feel? And shout out to Vice President Harris for saying no, even though we would have loved to see a next step, like running for the governor of California. She chose her in this moment and said, I will not. So I'm hopeful that we see something else from her, but again, honor those who have reached the point where we understand our boundaries and that this isn't the moment that we're coming to save. So thank you.
But just to hear you talk and your credentials, you're a bad sister.
Thank you.
And I want to talk about breast cancer. We, as Black women, right here in St. Louis, Missouri, is dying at an alarming rate from breast cancer. Black women are dying because of basically one reason is trust. Mm-hmm. First of all, it comes before the diagnosis. We don't trust each other. And it comes from so many things. Us not liking each other, we've been hurt by each other. It must stop. I am a 2-time breast cancer survivor. Before the age of 40, I found Valida's Hope. And I was told, as you talk about wages, you don't get paid for this. It's very hurtful. I am now a grandmother, and still the wages are low. This is my first time hearing about this through St. Louis Philanthropic Organization. This shouldn't have been. I should have known about this. Lack of resources, lack of sharing. So I say to you, Ms. Ferguson, thank you for being a voice today. You talk about imposter syndrome. I have won some of the most prestigious awards here in St. Louis. But I was told by a Black woman, you have imposter syndrome. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't think I belonged in the room, but I do belong in the room. And the things that I have accomplished without a degree. Hard work, sweat, blood, and tears. No money, no funding. So thank you, Ms. Ferguson, and I have something for you. You are loved.
Thank you, and see me after, please. Mm-hmm. Yes. These 2 ladies, you're sitting next to each other, 1 and 2. Yep.
Good morning, my sisters and everyone else in the room.
Oh, hey.
Wonderful. Hey! Blessings to you on your journey and for sharing your conquering, right? Because it's community that helps get you through that as well. And your story, you never know how that impacts someone who's going through that journey. So thank you for sharing that. So I wanted to get back to that 92% of us. A lot of the 92% are Black women who have been told that we have imposter syndrome, yet work on yourselves, build your confidence, yet we're not getting given the advocacy and the support we need in those work environments. But I just wanted to comment that I appreciate your comment on continuing the fight and finding ways to still support and be in the space. But I also appreciate VP Harris saying no, right? We can do both, we can feel both. I currently, in my journey, is what's the balance for me? Where's the no? Where's the I'm gonna continue to fight? And I think it's okay, right? Mm-hmm. I struggled with that. Being someone who is in this work of diversity, equity, and inclusion with my nonprofit, a part of me wanted to say, we still have to respond no matter that we're feeling defeated because we showed up, but we're still feeling the consequences as if we did not, right? That's a tough place to be in when you say, let's continue to fight. Mm-hmm. For what? Why? Because for whatever the period of time is, I feel like I'm still going to be in this space as if I was not in that 92%. So part of me is wanting to find community with women who are trying to figure that out for themselves. Like, what is my participation in the fight? And what are my boundaries? And I'm saying Black women, but there are a lot of women of color. I have colleagues that are in this work that have been laid off. Mm-hmm. You know, they're in the 92%, but women of power, people of color who no longer have jobs, significant job roles, right? That are trying to figure this out. What's the fight? Where's the boundary of my no? Because I'm feeling disrespected, because I'm not being supported, but still being told I have imposter syndrome. So how do we, as Black women in the 92%, how do we find that to say, you know what, I'm going to continue to do this work. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hook up with the legislators of Missouri, because y'all Missouri. Like, what is it that 92% of us, what are we doing? What's the action? And I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
My name is Brittany. I work at Operation Food Search. It's a nonprofit food bank. I just want to share that I am coming from a place of, just even earlier, feeling like I'm in a lot of conflict right now at my job. Everything that Prentice said, I've been called emotional. Mm-hmm. I've been told I'm not thinking rationally. And so hearing the perspective of, yeah, I come to work and show up every day done a lot of the times. And so I'm sitting with that and trying to take everything in that I'm learning today and seeing, okay, well, what part of me is done and what part of me is that my defensive self showing up and being done, right?
Okay. Thank you, Brittany. Next to Brittany, and then we'll come up.
One of the things that really stuck out for me that you said today was do the work, but on our own terms. Because I too felt very disrespected and still do. Not just for what happened in the election, but what I face as a Black woman every day, not just in the workplace, but just in life, right? And all of that is just like, I'm done. I'm about to go learn these line dances. There's a whole load of them that I need to go learn. I'm kicking my heels up, and I don't want to do anything because I'm done. So hearing you say that is comforting, but it also reminds me that while I'm done, work still needs to be done. So having that, I guess, permission or having it brought out that we can still do the work but on our own terms is very impactful. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. There was something specific, and pardon my voice, like you literally had me like up here in tears. I skipped church on Sunday, and I shouldn't have did that, and I feel like Jesus sent you behind to tell me everything I didn't hear.
Too much pressure.
So thank you for your transparency. But something that you said in the story that you told about when you were at the school, and they made the comparison between you and somebody else. So at my current job, I'm an executive director. I'm the third youngest they've ever hired. I'm the youngest Black person by 10 years that they've ever hired. The youngest woman by 25 years that they've ever hired. So naturally, there is this barrier and this boundary that I'm trying to break through. And everything is really attributed to a lack of emotional intelligence, and that's not the case. But in the running for this job, there was another young lady who was in the running with me, and they called her the top contender. I've been in my organization for 9 years, worked in every department, 7 different locations, master's degree, undergrad in pure mathematics, secondary education. Like, I had this list of qualifications. And not to down it, because I loved her as a person, you know? She was a Victoria's Secrets manager, had never worked in operations. So when they called her the top contender, all based on how palatable they felt like she was compared to me, it broke me in a way that I don't think I've recovered from, even in a year after being at the job. So my question to you is, when you were compared to those other people, how did you not hate them? Because not that I don't want her not to be successful, but I don't want to help with nothing she asked me to do. So like how do you, I have to wake up every morning and pray like, Lord, make it an act of my heart, my will, you know, and my mind to forgive her. But in all honesty, not only can I not stand the people who make the accusation, but she represents something for me that I don't even want to see on a daily basis. So what you do?
Oh my God. First, I called some of the people in this room to talk me off the ledge. But seriously, the village is strong. You have to find your people that get it. And I have the great fortune of being acquainted and in sisterhood with women who are at the highest levels of organization. So they understand leadership and the corporate game and all that in ways that I don't, because I'm a lawyer, but I came to be a lawyer. I didn't come to make money. I came to be disruptive. So I jump off the ledge very quickly. And sometimes they're like, no, you got to pull it back. But between that and reading, because being in that pandemic, it gave you a lot of time to do a lot of stuff that we didn't have time for. So I read a lot. I was engaged at the time on Twitter and noticed academics are very active there, so definitely find those forums that work for the industry that you're in, where people are having conversations. And I learned that it wasn't me, because I did internalize it. And these people said, oh, that's just how this is. And I'm looking at folks who, I cited their work when I was in law school. Like, these are hardcore researchers and scholars. And they're like, oh, I go through this. Or they're deans at a law school, but because they're Black women who are deans that aren't supposed to be, they're still dealing with it. So I'm like, one, it's not personal. And two, those two women, I worked very closely with them because of the nature of my work, but I understood that it wasn't even about them, it was about me, because they weren't used to seeing me. You gonna see me. And like I said, my experience there was positive. I mean, I was granted awards. And let me peel back a layer. I kind of masked this. But here's something that the student alluded to about my relationships with other students. So in academic settings, you often have professors who open up their homes and invite certain students to dinner, networking opportunities, relationship building, that transitions to internships, jobs, judicial clerkships. That's how it works for some students and not others. And so I was creating space for those students who were not brought into the table and given those same networks. And I don't know if this was a student. In my mind, I'm like, this was a colleague masking as a student, but I can't prove it. But if that was a student, I have to guess that that student might not have been brought into any circle, but I was the target, because you're not going to say that to a 10-year, 30-year professor with a Harvard degree, so you're going to come at me. Don't worry about what I'm doing for the other people, because that's what they needed. And that's that other piece when you have this conversation about equity. Everybody doesn't get the same, but people get what they needed. In that space, we were dealing with the pandemic, which was hurting everybody. Seeing George Floyd be murdered on camera, the aftermath of that, everybody marching, and then they weren't anymore because other things were playing out. And then January 6th, and to share openly, I was at an institution where our elected official, who was prominently profiled during that time, had been a faculty member. And so there was a group of students that wanted the dean to take a position on that, and the dean couldn't. And so those students wrote a letter, and it went viral. So there were a lot of things playing out in the background. And again, I was naturally the diversity, equity, and inclusion person, even though we technically didn't have one. When you're living in those environments, the need is still there. And so I did not, back to your question, I did not take it as a hit from those women, but I was very clear that the message that was being given is I'm being seen in comparison to these people and not these people. And that made it very clear to me that I had to assert who I was. I would never allow them to make me shrink. And I had to fight damn hard for that degree, that law license. I had to take the bar twice because no, I didn't pass the first time. So that was a battle. So ain't nobody gonna take that from me. So I just have to own that in my own spirit. Thank you. Sandra.
Wow. So so much has been revealed, but first I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm so proud of you. I have the privilege of being part of her village. And it's something to be said when you see somebody presenting in their power. And just to be able to share this moment with you is very special.
Thank you.
So thank you. So I want to give you your roses right now. But Zandra Bryant, so much I want to say, but I'm trying to think about, with the short period of time that we have, what's coming to my mind is the energy you expend being mad at somebody else is the energy you're not using to continue to pursue your purpose. Right? So let it go. Right? I think a lot of times illness, things that we are fighting against become the weapon that actually make us unhealthy. And the only way for it not to be a weapon is to release it. There's no benefit in you being upset about something that person had no power over, and that's detracting you from the purpose and the role that you're supposed to be in. So the healing that you needs to start with yourself, which is why I love the guest speaker. She said a lot of things that I think is very important. And then the other thing I want to say is sometimes spaces that make you uncomfortable is for you to leave because you're not supposed to be there. I have been uncomfortable more times than I care to mention. And instead of wondering why me, the question I ask is, am I supposed to be here? And overwhelmingly, the answer was no. And each time I took the step in the fear to pursue what was on the other side of realizing I wasn't supposed to be here, abundance was on the other side of that choice. So each time I've had to make a transition, scared out of my boots. But each time I realized my assignment where I was at was over, and that's okay. And where I was going has so much more to offer. So I just think part of the power is stop owning other people's shit. Just because somebody says something about you don't make it true, and it's more a reflection of them than it is of you, right? So when I walk into a room, I don't need validation from anybody else because my assignment is designed from a higher power, and I'm gonna walk in that purpose regardless. of how you feel. Because I don't need your permission. So when the election and all the things happen, and, you know, people who said they care about me, but they voted for my demise, so I don't know. I don't know if you really care about me, but that's a whole nother topic. They would ask me if I was okay. And I would say, they didn't give me my smile, they can't take it away. Right? And the last thing I'm gonna say that I'm gonna sit down is being done and focusing on yourself, and healing is part of the work. And it's okay to be selfish sometimes, because in order for you to be able to have the energy to expand, you have to deposit, right? So if you're depleted, you can't do the work that you meant to do. So I do a lot of things to replenish myself, and one of those things is convening with people on purpose that refuel you, and we create safe spaces for us to be vulnerable and discuss things to refuel. So thank you. I appreciate you and love you, and this is great. Oh.
Back to my comment, find your people.
Thank you so much for that. I needed that today. And hi, Shay. I am beyond proud of you. I actually grew up with her. I am beyond proud of you. And I just wanted to share that I made so many excuses not to be here today. That I was too busy at work, that I'm tired, I have too much going on. And I just wanted to share that I am beyond happy that I decided to come here. I'm getting so many jewels, so much tea. Just keep giving it to me. I feel so good. I was back here having a hot flash. I had to pull out my fan. So I want to apologize for that, but I am so proud of you, and keep doing the work that you're doing. You almost bring me to tears.
Lord.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And that hot flash, that might be a topic for another day, because it's gotten real.
I just wanted to pick up on finding your village. My name is Jasmine. I have 3 women in my life, and we get together every year. And I have a lot of friends. Those aren't my only 3 women, but Stacy, Nicole, and Hallie. We went together, we went to college together, and at some point after graduating college and grad school and everything, we decided we were gonna do girls' weekends every year. Regardless, I was pregnant doing girls' weekend. Hallie was pregnant with her 3rd and 4th child doing girls' weekends. But we commit to it, because that is a time for us to get away from our lives, our jobs, and we all have stressful jobs. One is a marketing executive, one is an education consultant around DEI and racial equity who lost 80% of her contracts this year. The 3rd is a teacher, administrator. I run a nonprofit. So we all have hectic lives and jobs, but we commit to a weekend every year to get together. And we look forward to it. We plan for it. We set the date. We get on Zoom. We're like, where are we going to go? Where are we going to stay? What are we going to do? One weekend we got together in Florida and we did absolutely nothing.
Love it.
And her husband, one of Stacy's husband called her one day while we were there, and he was like, what are you all doing? And she said, nothing.
Love it.
What have you done today? Nothing. We sat by the pool. We drank. And he was like, that was it? Yes. That's all we did. And we talk the entire weekend. And we fill into each other, we pour into each other so that by the time the weekend is over, we just feel so much better. We go back to our families feeling renewed and rejuvenated. And so I definitely encourage that network and that sister circle. And you don't have to go somewhere all the time. You can just come together over dinner and just pour into each other and just lay out whatever the issue is. One thing that we do, if somebody's having an immediate concern, we're texting each other and we're saying, should we just get on Zoom? Because we're located all over the country. And we'll get on Zoom. One of them had an instance where her husband physically abused her, had a moment of physical abuse that completely threw her off guard. And she texted us telling us what was going on. And we said, all right, can you get on Zoom tomorrow? I know you got to deal with it right now. We did a DoorDash card. We sent it to her so that she could get meals for herself and her family. But the very next day, we were on Zoom together to help her, support her through this and say, what can we do, even from a distance, to help you out? So I definitely say, find your circle, find your people, get together with them whenever you can, however often as you can, even if it's a series of text messages, because that definitely has helped me. I know it's helped them. I know a lot of Black women who have their circles, and so if you don't have one, especially young lady, if you don't have one, please do get one so that you have people that you can call and say, this is what I'm dealing with, and they can give you sage advice like sister over here. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Find your new place if you need to go to a new place.
Thank you. And I think we have time probably for 2 more. And again, I want to acknowledge the allies in the room. I know I said please center, but that doesn't mean silence you. Feel free to speak up if you have something to share.
Hey, everybody. My name is Angie with BioSTL. I just want to say one thing. We must be powerful if everyone despises us, wants to put us in our place, all that. So I just want to say, remember the power that you have. They do not fight little bitty gnats like that. They fight King Kong like this. So we King Kong up in here. That's all I want to say.
Love it.
Thank you. Hi. When I first came in, I wanted to say, "Okay, shoes," but I kept that to myself.
Don't take my shoes away ever.
Hi, I'm Nisha Martin Schmidt, and I guess I'll start with like a tiny story because I want to take care of time. But in my MBA program, a gentleman from a different ethnicity and country, we were both like basically doing the leadership role. And I said, it's really important for me to maintain my 4.0 in this program because I'm going to get my PhD next. And he said, well, I have a 4.0 too, and I don't know how it's possible that you have a 4.0 because it's too difficult. Mm-hmm. And I had to like control myself, and I said, okay. And I just talked to God, and I was like, okay, this is part of my expansion, being able to handle this. And so I'm a processor, so I wrote my question down. In my work, where I often am leading women toward ownership, that's the way I define it, many have been historically expected to underperform. And being called, whenever someone comes in my proximity, my word is, I'm calling you higher. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And so when I call them higher to a level of excellence, I often notice that triggers imposter syndrome for them. Not only internally, but also it's mirrored back by the situations, the experiences, and by others who question the shift that's happening internally with them. Mm-hmm. And I want to know from you, how do I continue to create the safety, because I think that's really key here, and help them build robustness, because it's not always resiliency, the robustness and the capacity to truly thrive in a space that, rather than simply pushing through, like I said, to the resiliency alone.
Mm-hmm. That is a big question. I want to open that because I know who's in the room to some that might because of what they do. Anybody? I'll come back.
Wow, on the spot. What was your question, sweetheart? Just restate it and so to make sure I answer the right thing.
So basically, when I'm calling a woman higher, and specifically a Black woman higher,
Mm-hmm.
I also notice because she has that, been usually called to a level of underperformance and, letting her baseline be her status quo.
Mm-hmm.
And when she comes in my proximity, I call her higher,
Yeah.
and that triggers her imposter syndrome, both through our conversation and also throughout her life and work that from our time together. And so my question is, how do we create the robustness and the capacity for Black women to continue to thrive in their direction of their
Okay, so look, let me first say I hate the word imposter syndrome. I think it's a label that the secular world has leveraged to diminish our innate power that has nothing to do with them that they can't understand. So my first thing to you is to shed using and giving life to a word that you didn't create and that wasn't meant for you. So that's my first piece of advice. And my second piece of advice is your interaction at the time may be the first time that female has been seen. And to lean into the uncomfortable space of giving grace and allow healing. And you may not need to say anything. You may just need to give her a hug. A lot of times, healing comes in silence. And you're not meant to have the answer. You're meant to give her the space and grace to receive the answer that only she is supposed to hear. Right? So I think we get caught up in having to have all the answers every time we're in a space, and sometimes you just need to be the hugger, right? To use the term from the person. And just, I get away from having to be the answer. Because I'm not trying to be anybody Jesus. But if I can allow them to connect with their own spirit, then they magnify their inner voice and ability to hear messages that's only meant for them. And then your work is done. And don't think that it's meant to be more than what it is, because sometimes your assignment is in the moment. It's not meant to be for the lifetime, right? So that's what I would say. But shit, that imposter syndrome, that is not our term, right? We bold, black, beautiful, all the other things that we are, brilliant. But that is a word that they use because they don't understand. And when you so bright that they can't see, they look for things to dim your light. So I would shed any language that other people articulate that doesn't call you who you are, right? You don't have to claim it just because somebody said it, because they done called us all kinds of things throughout the years, and ain't none of it true. So.
Right behind you, and then I don't know what's behind us in this.
So to answer that, I have a quick story. I have a relative who grew up gang banging here in St. Louis for almost 40 years, and all of the men in the group are either dead in jail. And the women are walking around with their shirts, long live so-and-so, rest in peace, all of the stuff. And I have been seen and called the bougie one in the family, because I went away, went to HBCU, got my master's from UCLA, blah, 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 blah. And they ridiculed me for being smart, right? Because I wasn't in the street. And I moved away, lived in 6 different states. But this young lady had a baby at 14, never stepped foot in a high school. And recently, she lost the roof of the house that she was renting in downtown St. Louis in this tornado. And at that moment, I said to her, stop renting, it's time for you to buy. And you can do this. She was like, I can't, da-da-da-da. I said, yes, you can. Get a realtor, let's do this. She closes on her house on August the 11th. And I will fly back here to St. Louis to help her sign those papers. So sometimes it's like at the moment, you can be silent, but when it's time, step up and encourage, because we are powerful and we don't know it. And sometimes we just need another voice. And so who knew that the bougie one was the one that would help her step into her next level of excellence?
Love it. Thank you. Again, thank you all for being here. I think we have gotten the hook, but I am available. I have my information here, my LinkedIn profile. Mind Over Matter is something that has been in process for years, birthed last year, and we will be doing more of this through that platform. So again, thank you for coming out today. Thank you for being part of the summit. Take everything in that comes throughout the 2-day period. This is one of my favorite events of the year. Thanks. I'm coming.